Of course, we're still on education matters. We're taking a look at the transfers of head teachers from one school to the other. But now, before we continue with our discussion, our heated discussion, let's just listen to some of the leaders, what they had to say on this.
You can't do mass transfers. Why can't it be in a more organized manner?
But you know, we always say when a dog barks and misbehaves, don't go for the dog, go for the owner. Uhuru Kenyatta, this rogue minister of yours is giving you a bad name, and you better get rid of him because he's taking this country nowhere. We cannot allow him to carry out daily experiments on our children.
Our headmasters have been on the committee of a school. If you are asking too much questions, they could run. Next time during the final election, you will not be on that board. Na anakaa kwa hiyo shule mpaka siku ile atapata retirement. He's a public officer. Kama yeye alikuwa mwalimu mzuri, kwa nini hawezi kwenda kutufundishia watoto Mandera? Hatuletee. Iko makosa gani mwalimu mzuri kwenda kufundisha watoto wetu Kisii?
When you talk of delocalization, Kenya is one. And then you come up with punitive transfers. How do you expect a teacher at 54 years, a head teacher at 54 years, crossing over 5 counties to a new county where he has to work for about 6 years and then retire? I don't think this is very fair. We are actually talking to the Teachers Service Commission, which is the employer of teachers. Can you sit and see to it that transfers are not made punitive just because teachers don't have a voice?
At the moment, we don't want any transfer disturbances for this particular excelling schools. Hatutaki transfer yote kwa hawa walimu. Kama vile watu wanasema huko nje, mara Kabanguria Boys, mara Ortum, mara Chewa. No, when we disturb our teachers, tukisumbua maneno ya hapa na transfer na pale, hatuwezi kurealize hii maneno ya good results kama venye tumeona saa hizi. So mimi kama NAT secretary ya West Pokot, I will take minimum delay but maximum speed to defend these 2 teachers ama 3 teachers ya West Pokot wenye wanasema ati wanaenda nje. Hatutaki maneno ya transfer, we want stability in our schools.
All right, I'll start with what Retangula said. Is the CS taking, or using the ministry as a lab, as what he's, playing with children's future, experimenting with the children of Kenya? Mark, I'll start with you.
You know, the ridiculousness of Kenyan politics is that truth is transient based on political mileage, meaning that every time a politician speaks in this country, it's whether it's to his benefit or not. But Angula is not addressing education. He's addressing his beef with the presidency. That's what he's expressing. And therefore, I would wholesale disregard his remarks, because we cannot forget that we live in a country where that when we began to transform our education sector, not only did children produce music videos dissing the cabinet secretary, but also we saw rampant school fires across this country, demonstrating against what? The ability to cheat in an exam. That's what we were defending. Now, the reality of the matter today is that every single head teacher is a public servant. He is a servant of 44 million Kenyans, wherever they may be. Why are we not complaining about ambassadors being transferred?
All right.
Why are we not complaining about county commissioners who are in charge of security being transferred? Why don't we complain when the chief is transferred? Why don't we complain when the OCS is transferred? The reason we are complaining, by the way, and I want Kenyans to hear me very well, is because when a principal sits in an office for a long time, cartels form around him, and that is why you find weird fees structures and why parents are fainting, because you go to a school and you're being told that teachers have a teacher's tea fee, that you have a desk fee, that you have a extra uniform pair fee.
Yes.
These are the problems that are endemic to any person who sits in a position of power for too long. This is the same reason our president gets transferred every 10 years, transferred to retirement. We need to employ that every single kind of civil servant needs to be transferred so that, number one, we have equitable experience across the civil service,
Right.
and number two, we do not see corruption becoming endemic in our country.
Kevin, so should there be a cap on the number of years a head teacher should stay in a school? Do you?
In my view, not necessarily.
All right.
But probably yes, because then for you to become a head teacher or a principal of a school, it means that there are certain things that you have done as you get in as a P1 or those levels of teachers, yeah? So how you're able to perform your skills, your expertise, and how you also interact with people and their own view of evaluating you as an individual.
Yes.
And that precisely makes you the leader that therefore people are supposed to have. But let's look at it this way. The major things that in terms of service delivery, education is very close to the hearts of many Kenyans, in fact all Kenyans. And every parent also wants to have the kid or the pupil go to a very good school. And how this is ensured and assured within the school level is what I said at the beginning.
All right.
It has to work because education, all these services don't take place in a vacuum. They have support systems. They have a manner in which they operate. And the principal, the head teacher, is this person who is supposed to drive all these support systems. And so for me, in terms of whether the transfers are done, whether Wetangula is accusing the president, but of course the president has to come in because when you appoint a CS, it is actually someone that you're giving your delegated powers to be able to go and do certain things for you. And what I mean by this is the president has given us a promise of better education for citizens as espoused in our constitution. And how this is going to be ensured is for the ministry to be able to put in place even those, again, support systems to be able to support the principals, the teachers, and how that is done is, in my view, communication.
All right.
I think Dr. Matiang'i has had very, very beautiful reforms for the education system, which did not start when he became the CS. But let's look at his performance at the University of Nairobi, how he became the CS, and exactly what he is trying to do. In my view, I would appeal to the CS to be as open. Let him let him exercise an open door policy so that any stakeholder, like the four of us here, if we have issues, we can be able to submit them and to be seen to be some action to be seen to be happening. Then we have a sustainable process that is able also to sustain both the president's legacy in education and also the cabinet secretaries.
I like what you've said. Let him be open, but maybe Kenyans should also be open to change. Bernard.
Yeah, change is inevitable, and whenever change comes, we experience resistance, which is normal with the human being. But looking at what Weta is talking about, is my party leader. I respect him so much, but he's addressing his audience, he's addressing his supporters, because the sentiments that are coming from Bungoma is that we don't want these transfers. And French School Kamsing is one of the biggest and very celebrated school in Bungoma County, where Wetangula is the senator. So the people want to hear that he's also supporting the governor, the sentiments expressed by the governor. But that notwithstanding, I think when a change comes, we need to embrace, because we don't know what will happen. And you asked the question about keeping the years that a principal should stay in school. In my view, I strongly support that position, because we have had people staying in one station for quite too long, to the extent that now, you expect good performance, but as he stays there, he gets used to everything. He gets connected to these cartels Mark is talking about. Then at the end of the day, you get performance going down.
Yes.
So I hope the principal that has been posted to French School Kamsinga is going to perform so well, because he knows his performance is going to be checked.
Okay.
And I can bet with you that this principal is going to put his feet on the ground, and is going to ensure that students in Kamsinga are going to pass.
Because they're trying to protect their name.
They are trying to protect their need. So it's very important that we respect change, although it comes with some difficulties.
Right.
But wherever we embrace it, we realize that in the long term, it will is going to bear fruits. As we speak, I know Matiang'i is almost leaving the Ministry of Education. So the question on most Kenyans is, what are going to be the afterwards?
All right.
As in, because he has put some structures on the ground, and the president is now acting.
Just wait, gentlemen. It looks like this discussion
if those structures are not well, protected,
yes,
then we we are going to see a collapse.
All right, I want us to move on to free secondary education. And of course, this was promised during the campaign period. But of course, some of the school heads had reactions on it. Before we start the discussion on it, let's just listen in.
The books have not been put in place. The infrastructure is still inadequate. So we need to understand how this infrastructure will be put in place, the books, and above all, our teachers have not been capacity built. And you cannot start a program without putting the teacher into the picture, because the key persons in this reform is the teacher and the child. You can sit well and you can discuss in Nairobi, you can share ideas, but if a teacher is not, the attitude of a teacher is not changed, and above all, not capacity built well, then there's nothing that will transpire.
Napasa kama elimu ni ya bure, wapee mwanafunzi pesa yote. Lakini si kusema watatoa hii ala parents watoe hiyo.
We understood it as the free component of education, not free lunch or free uniform.
All right. So I'll just start by asking, were Kenyans duped when, leaders were campaigning on free education? We just saw a parent faint because of the school fees. What are your thoughts on this, Mark?
First, it's very sad that a parent had to faint because of school fees. But let's understand something. Mm-hmm. When the government talks about free primary education, it did not cover free boarding education. It did not cover the extra amenities that a parent may choose in primary school education. In this particular case, what Jubilee promised to the nation was free day secondary education, meaning that everything that is covered apart from boarding would be covered by the government. Mm-hmm. Now, we know that the government has released an extra 10 billion shillings or so to accommodate the influx of these new day students. Now, that being said, let's understand one thing. Number one, the number of students that were staying out of secondary schools before is huge. Mm-hmm. So when you're going to increase all of them, there's going to be a tax and a burden on the existing system. The government has to work on improving laboratories and spaces and hiring more teachers to accommodate these students. And we expect there to be a lot of teething problems. Number two, we need to really verify what is this that these principals and different schools are charging as school fees? Mm-hmm. Because some of them border on the ridiculous, like teachers' tea, as though they don't earn a salary. And so there needs to be a modicum of sanity to bring this dream into reality. Okay. But I fully expect that there will be teething problems, as with any new process.
All right, Kevin, you're smiling. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I am smiling because I would probably agree with you that people were duped, and we've seen that happen, like the Unga prizes, so you come in and you think, let's just hit it up. Kenyans have feelings. The government should be able to come to the level of the feeling of Kenyans. It is good to make these decisions at the round table, but is it possible that Kenya can also invest in research so that we have data that then is able to inform our decisions? Why the free education, whether primary or secondary, during President Kibaki's time was very successful, because that's probably in our independence when it was tried, tested, and proved to be working, is because he was able to invest in research. And he got in the right people to do the right jobs. Mm-hmm. And these right people came out there and looked at who can be able to support this system. And the friends of Kenya, like the Africa Development Bank, the World Bank, the United Nations, UNESCO, among others, plus several others, who are able to come in to invest in education. And right now we have county governments that are also actually can also be added into this bargaining pot. If we can be able to have sustainability by involving other people, yes, then I do not see why whatever the government is trying to achieve should not be successful. But that means that consultation and openness and communication with the people, because through that then you're able to sustain all these systems. If a teacher is going to be successful in a school, as you walk into a class, you of course have to be prepared, and that preparation comes through different forms, and the kids have to feel confident that we are being taught the right things, which I am sure that the ministry is trying to do.
Yes.
But in terms of whether free or not, the government, I think, needs to, again, I agree with some of the teachers, stop doing research and just ensure, I mean, not research, but experiments, with the children, and more or less expand the investment. And how to do this is also to invite other people who can be able to support the building of laboratories, the building of classrooms. I saw a story by Agnes Pender last night of kids learning under trees and kids sharing a classroom. 54 years down the line, independence, we are talking about free, but we are not seeing it happening on the grassroots.
All right, Bernard, you'll have the final word. He's talked about kids, learning under trees. Just the other day, we saw a school in Keresoi where parents are told to come with desks for children to learn, at this rate where Kenya is. Is this the right way? Is this the right path that we should be taking, briefly?
Before I comment on free secondary education and free primary education, allow me to make a comment on this issue of consultation. In Kenya we have this big man syndrome, whereby everybody feels he needs to be consulted before a process kicks off. And it's constitutional, but sometimes let's allow structures to operate. Because the other day you saw Sosion saying that he has not been consulted over curriculum.
Yes.
But when he was invited to Jogo House, he came out smiling. So we don't know what consultations involved.
I can tell you.
And he did not. He did not reject anything.
Right.
So
actually, just
let's allow.
You know why this is important? Is because if someone decides to petition this process in court for failure of a public participation process, imagine the amount of years we will take with kids gallivanting around with no education going on if you stop the curriculum process. So this process we need to
you
have
can
a
consult, you can consult
stakeholder
but
process.
you don't have to consult everybody. There are people, there are key stakeholders that can be consulted, but not.
Nat is a key stakeholder in education.
He was consulted. Now, back to free primary and secondary education. I think the promises, the sentiments that we get, the public pronunciations that politicians make during campaigns, at sometimes as Kenyans we take them so serious, but they are normally aimed at getting votes. And after the vote, after you cast your vote, your mandate ends there. And the decisions that are made sometimes might not necessarily be part of those pronunciations. So we need to separate between politics and policy implementation. And what government would have done, if I would be in government, is to invest in the infrastructure. Because we have schools, you will talk about good issues like, computer, like, laptops for pupils, free primary education, free secondary education. But you're not looking at where are these, because whenever you see that something is free, then there will be an influx of people coming in, pupils, students coming in. Where are they going to sit? Because you need to set a base first. You need to set a foundation. And the foundation for this is infrastructure. Do you have enough classrooms? Do you have enough teachers? Do you have enough, space? Do you have enough scholarly materials, that are going to support that initiative? So it will have started from that background, to have desks for where pupils are going to sit. You can't call people to come in, then they sit on the ground. They don't have chairs, they don't have desks, So infrastructure is very, very important in any process.
The question I'd like to leave the country with, is it better to have no education or some education under a tree?
Education.
That's the question we must ask ourselves.
The constitution is clear, Mark. Let's not mislead people.
As a developing country,
education.
And I'll give Rwanda as an example. Rwanda started under the tree. Gave tablets to kids under trees.
How many years
After how
ago?
long?
How many years ago?
Just wait, and began to build infrastructure around this. It's the same thing that Kibaki did. When all these people, including an 80-year-old man, went for free primary education, what we did is we gave them education as we built the infrastructure. Let's not separate this issue.
All right.
This is 10 years after Kibaki. We are still having kids learning under trees.
Yes. How many years down the line?
My friend.
What Mark is supporting, Ashil, is that Bora Elimu.
Is it need quality
But we
education.
need quality education. Tell you, if I sent you pictures of my primary school and how dilapidated it looked and where I am today,
You need to go there and improve that
I
school.
will tell you for free.
Are you
I
a
will
board
tell you
member
for
of a
free.
school in your
It
village?
is better for us to start. Listen, you start somewhere, even if you're going to heaven. The journey of 1,000 miles begin with a single step. Let's start the journey.
Which takes us back to what you were discussing.
Yes.
Investment in education and goodwill for teacher transfers.
Yes.
Because you will need the villagers to even volunteer to be able to ensure that they even contribute to have this infrastructure. But you see, as they contribute, the government has a budget. So we cannot sit here and listen to Mark saying, let us just start from somewhere. That the government is supposed to invest. But in that investment,
I'm not saying
have
invest.
friends of the support
I'm saying,
system.
as you're waiting for investment, teach.
And at least,
Mark, you have been asked, have you done anything to develop the school that you're in?
Yes, we contributed for 8 years.
Listen, actually, as we conclude,
Finally.
My friend Kevin talked about research.
Yes.
Do we have currently statistics
Yes, we do.
showing teacher pupils or teacher-student ratio, as in what a number of pupils have come in, how many teachers are in those schools, and how many teachers are going to, we need to address these issues so that when these pupils come in, I think we have quality. We don't just say bora elimu. We need elimu bora.
If you look at any country that has developed, the one thing that you must do is you must always learn to begin with the lot that you're dealt. Do not wait to build 1,000 classrooms to educate students. Build the classrooms as you're educating.
Actually, I'm sorry to take you back, but 55 years down, when our founding fathers put the foundation of this country, they said 3 enemies of the republic.
Yes.
Ignorance, anger, and poverty.
Yes.
55 years, we are still dealing with Ujinga. And Mark is telling us to do it under trees.
But the government, do you want us to lie to ourselves that we do not have enough classrooms? That is the reality. So my question to you is, we already messed up for 55 years. That's fine. Where we are today,
we should start with the foundation.
You play the hand that you're dealt. So while you develop the classrooms, teach the students.
What we are asking the government to do through the ministry is to invest deliberately in education.
The infrastructure.
So that we have quality education as per our constitution. And so that we're able to sustain all these systems that are supposed to guarantee. Because for the president also to achieve his big 4, education has to come in very, very handy.
All right.
And if the mistakes are going to continuously presented as we can see some of them being done, I don't think his legacy is going to be a good
Thank
one.
you, gentlemen. Mark Bichachi, Kevin Osido, and Bernard Wakoli. Thank you. That was a very interesting conversation. We take a short break here on Morning Express, but when we come back, we will be having more. For our KTN home viewers, we bid goodbye to you. I'm Ashley Mazuri.